Hi everyone, my name is Tori, this is Novel Life, and welcome back to my channel. Today I have my top books of the year to share with you. I actually made this list a couple weeks ago, I want to say like 2 or 3 weeks ago, because I wanted to see like how many top books did I have? Did I have to narrow it down by anything? And I was actually surprised that I have 16 books on my top books of the year. Technically, there's 20 books, so it's my top 20 of the year. I don't think I probably could have narrowed it down to my top 10. I don't have a necessary order except the top like 5 books. So I have kind of like groups of like, these were solid and I rated them 5 stars and I really liked them. And then I have the next tier that's like, these are really, really good. I had a visceral and emotional reaction to these books. And then the next tier is like my top 5 or 6 that's like, oh my god, these are my favorite books of the year and I will never not stop talking about them. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump in because that's what you're here for. You're here to talk about my top books of 2023. So like I said, these are in no particular order other than like my very top books. So the first one I want to talk about is In the Weeds by B.K. Borison. This is the second book in the Love Light series. Both of our characters go through a very emotional and healing journey through this book, and I personally really just connected with that when I started reading this book. I read this like the first or second day of the year. This is one of my first or second 5-star reads of 2023. So I knew from the beginning that this was going to be on my top books of the year, just because Evelyn and Beckett really go through it. And they have this a very simple and sweet romance, but at the same time, it's not simple and sweet. Because they're both personally going through things, it makes the romance more angsty. It makes it more rocky. You're like, are they actually going to be together? Like, how is this supposed to work out? They're basically wondering what their careers are going to look like, where they're going to live, what they're going to do for the rest of their life. So it was a very emotional book for me, and I personally really loved it. I know that in this series, a lot of people do like this book, and it's their favorite. So yeah, this one is one that I'm like, yes, it was a favorite of the year. It was a 5-star read. I had so many quotes from this book that I loved, and definitely one that I would recommend to a lot of people if you're looking for like a sweet contemporary romance, but it's one of my favorites of the year. The next book I want to talk about is Reckless by Elsie Silver. So a lot of people are going to be like, Tori, you loved Reckless that much that it's one of your top books of the year? Yes. And the reason why is because the way that Elsie Silver wrote this surprise pregnancy, secret baby trope that I usually do not like, I cried in this book. When Theo found out that Winter has gone through a pregnancy by herself, had a baby by herself, and he finally gets to meet this child, Elsie Silver wrote that particular scene in such a way that you could not help but be moved by it. It was just so beautiful and so just like you felt for everything. Like everything made sense and what led to this moment. And you feel for Theo not being in his child's life for X amount of time. You feel for Winter for having this, being in this situation with Theo. You feel bad for this child, even though like they don't really know what's going on. It's just like an all around thing that made me have like just like this very emotional reaction to this book. And I think that Elsie Silver wrote it beautifully, in my opinion. I think it's one of the 3 surprise pregnancies and secret baby books that I actually really enjoyed and I would recommend to a lot of people. But I really love Theo in here. I love Winter. I love that Winter got her redemption story. This is small town. Theo's like a cowboy. I forgot exactly what he does, but it takes place in Chestnut Springs. It's book, I think, 4 in the series. You can read them out of order. You can read it as a standalone, but it was so good. I loved it. I think that Elsie Silver wrote this book beautifully, and that's why it's a favorite of the year. Another book I want to talk about is Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. So Julie Soto is a debut author. I would say she's a debut traditionally published author. She has wrote fan fiction in the past. She wrote The Auction, which is a Draco and Hermione fanfic, and I have yet to read it, but it's on my to be read list for 2024. But this is her first like debut published book. And for some reason, the way that she wrote this book, I really loved it. I love a second chance romance. I think I read this book in like one sitting. I don't know. I just think the past to present, where the past is being told by his point of view only, and the present is being told by her point of view only. So you get like both sides of the story a little bit because you get her thoughts of what happened in the past, but you're seeing it from his eyes what happened in the past. So you're able to like put things together as the reader. And it just made this really enjoyable reading experience for me. It was very unique and it was something that I absolutely really loved. I just love the romance between these 2 characters. Like I said, I read it in one sitting. It was a 5-star read for me, and yes, hands down, one of my favorites of the year. The next book I want to talk about is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. So this book is the second book that she's written and published. And I will say this really took me by surprise too, because I knew what I was getting into with The Dead Romantics because I read that last year. I really liked the little fantastical element that Ashley Poston added to this book. What she did in this book and the way she wrote about grief and talked about grief and how it's not a linear thing really hit me. She intertwined our female character story and what she's talking about, how she's healing from having her aunt pass away unexpectedly and how she's inheriting her apartment and all this stuff like that, as well as while she's very depressed and down, she's not sure where she's going in life anymore. This man shows up in her apartment magically and she's like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "Your aunt let me stay here." That starts this little romance between them, but there's this fantastical aspect of the apartment itself, and you learn about this in the book. And I just thought this was a sweet, wholehearted book that I really fell in love with this year. And Ashley Poston has become an author that I will read anything that she publishes, and I cannot wait for her book next year to see if that makes my top books of the year. But this one is definitely on it. The next book I'm going to talk about is A Butcher and Blackbird by Bryn Weaver. Okay, I don't have a physical book of. I swear I thought I had one, but I do not. This is literally the most unique book I have ever read in my entire life. And it was so amazing. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it's the content of what she's writing or if it's just her writing itself. I have yet to read more from this author. The way that she wrote this serial killer romance, where they're basically serial killer vigilantes, where they are going out and finding other serial killers who are actually killing like normal and good people, and they kill them. So they're only killing the bad people. That's why I would call them vigilantes. But the humor in this book is what got me. I was laughing out loud. And no, it's not a rom-com. People say it's kind of like a rom-com. I don't think it's a rom-com. It just has very dark humor. It made me laugh out loud. I was getting emotional. I love the romance. The romance was so like just epic in this way that only like two serial killers falling in love could be. I don't know exactly what it was when I read this book, but it hit the spot. It was amazing. And I know a lot of people love it. I did not listen to the audiobook, but I heard the audiobook is absolutely amazing. So if you haven't, definitely pick up the audio if you can. I just don't know what it was. Like, he's an Irishman who's a chef. That's why he's called Butcher. She's this serial killer that's known for like weaving these webs and stuff like that and leaving all like intricate like patterns and stuff. It was such an enjoyable read and I loved it. And yeah, I'm definitely interested in the next book. It's called Lark and Leather, or Leather and Lark, I think, which is one of the Butcher's brothers, and I cannot wait. I literally cannot wait for this book to come out next year. So now we're getting into kind of like the second tier where everything just like takes a step higher. I feel like Butcher and Blackbird was like that next book in that next level. Like I said, I literally cannot rank these other than like my top books, and we'll get there, I promise. The next book I want to talk about is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. So this book took a lot of people by surprise this year, and I was someone who I literally just picked up this book in December. I have a whole reading vlog with all of my thoughts if you want to go check it out. I'll link it in the cards. I'm currently reading Ruthless Vows now. So when I talk about Divine Rivals, I talk about it as a duet basically, but I don't know what it was, but this book takes what I love in historical fiction. It takes what I love in a like fantasy romance, and it takes what I love in a romance and puts it all together. I'm a huge historical fiction lover. I haven't read any historical fiction this year, but that's going to change in 2024. But this really reminded me of why I love historical fiction so much, because honestly, it takes place in this like what would be World War I-esque time. There's like enchanted buildings. You have these typewriters that are enchanted and that can send letters back and forth just through the slip of like under the wardrobe, like under the door. It goes to the other person who has that particular typewriter. Both of these characters take their words and what they create very seriously. They're both rival journalists, I guess you could say. And they just have this epic romance that blooms in this book. And I was tearing up. I got very emotionally attached to these characters. I'm literally 50% through Ruthless Vows. And that book is giving me just everything I needed. And I'm waiting for the moment that they can finally be together again. I really hope it's an HEA. I'm hoping, but when I say this takes like a little bit of fantasy and a little bit of historical fiction and a lot of romance and puts it all together, that's exactly how this book is when you read it. It just is everything that I love, and that's why it's one of my personal favorites of the year. I would recommend it to people, but I understand that some people might not like it or give it like the 5-star rating I did. But as a reader personally, this is what I love when I read books. So that's why it became one of my favorites. So I would definitely recommend checking this out if you haven't already. If you're one of like the only people that haven't this year, definitely check this out. The next one I want to talk about is Caught Up by Liz Tomforde. So Caught Up is the third book in the Windy City series. And let me tell you, this book also took me by surprise. I feel like a lot of my favorites of the year really take me by surprise, either because I lowered my expectations or I really just didn't have any expectations. But this one, he's a single dad. He's trying to play baseball. He's had his baseball career for a while now. So he's like, should I retire? Should I not? Like, I want to start my family. Like, I want to, put more time and effort into my family. Our female character comes home to Chicago where her dad is the head coach of the baseball team that our main male character is on. And Kai is just like, who is this woman? He like sees her like double fisting 2 beers, but he doesn't know that it's the coach's daughter. So already has this like perception of her and like is like, oh, I don't really like her. But the coach is like, oh, she can be your nanny, because he's gone through nanny after nanny, because most of the time they just want to, be and take care of his child because he's a very famous baseball player. And our female character is like, sure, why not? I'm not doing anything. She's struggling with her career, what she wants to do. And the ending of this book really got me. A lot of people were like, why did you cry? And I cannot pinpoint why I cried, other than just seeing the family dynamic that these 3 people, including the child, even though the child's very young, that they created. Because not only does she have a relationship with the child being a nanny, she starts to fall in love with the child. Like, she loves the child for like her own child. She starts to fall in love with Kai. They have this really big found family aspect with the baseball team and the other characters in the Windy City series. And it's just all of those things were written in such a way that made me emotional. Like, I'm like, this is a beautiful story. Like, these people are living their life in Chicago right now, and I think that's beautiful to me. I don't know what it was, but it's definitely one that I wanted to put on my list because it's definitely one that I did read and I cried and I had an emotional reaction to. As you can tell, a lot of these books, if I had an emotional reaction to these books, they made my top books of the year. So now I have some fantasy books that I want to talk about. The first one is Heavenly Bodies by Amani Iru. And I will say that currently it's Stuff Your Kindle Day. I'm filming this on December 27th. If I'm not mistaken, this book is still free on Kindle. So I'll have all of these books, but this book will also be linked in the description box below if you want to go grab it for free. This fantasy romance is very unique. It's been a while since I've read a fantasy romance that really incorporates mythology into a romance, and I really liked it. So the beginning, it starts just kind of like every other fantasy. It really gets you going where it's like, okay, our female character, she is escaping her kingdom where her parents have been, killed. Everyone in her kingdom has been either killed or taken over by this other rival kingdom. And she escapes to a nearby kingdom that's like an ally to her. And they kind of like take her into hiding. But she is one of like very few people in the entire fantasy world that Amani Iru has created, where our female character possesses what they call the 3. It's 3 magical elements, I guess you can say, and the prince of the kingdom where she's at also possesses those elements. So this type of fantasy where they're working together, he's teaching her all these things and they start to fall in love. But at the end of the book, you see that it's this like otherworldly love. It's like bigger than just the 2 of them. And I loved it. I have yet to continue on with the next book in the series, but I will at some point. It's just they're very big books, and it's a fantasy I would definitely recommend to a lot of people. I would even say if you're newer to fantasy, you would like this book. The next book I want to talk about is The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. So this whole series is amazing. I read all 3 books. It's 2 full-length books and 1 novella this year. This is one of the first books I read in the year, and I gave it 5 stars. So I knew this was going to be on my top books of the year. I really love not only the romance, like this is a romantasy, right? Not only do I love the romantasy aspect, but I love our female character, Araya. She is not like every other female character in fantasy romance. She has like different qualities that I personally really enjoyed reading. And I've read a lot of other fantasy characters like her this year, but because this is one where it was like refreshing to read, I think that's why it stuck with me so much. But Araya's journey throughout both the books, through the duet, really hits you in a way that you're like, wow, she goes through a lot, and yet she stands back up on her feet and she doesn't let anyone else like drag her down. Do you know what I mean? And I personally really love that. I think that it was amazing, and I think it was just a very enjoyable fantasy romance. Don't get me wrong, Rain is a very badass character too. And he has a lot of secrets in this book that he's hiding, but this whole series all around was so good, but this one is the first book. So that's why this one is one of my favorite books of the year. Another fantasy I want to talk about is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. So this one definitely took everyone by storm this year, and I was debating whether or not to actually put this on my top books of the year, because I didn't like Iron Flame as much as I thought I would. But I was thinking, if I didn't read Iron Flame this year, would I still consider this the 5-star best book? One of my favorite fantasies? Yes. So that's why it's on this list. Just the way that Rebecca Yarros wrote this, I had such a fun time reading this book. And it's been a while since I read a fantasy romance where we dive into the action, You just jump right into everything. You have this female character that is so strong. And I will say, I think I connect with this book a lot more than some people because our female character has a chronic illness. And so she's struggling with that literally throughout the whole book, an entire flame. So I think that's why I connected with her so much. And I don't know, just the way that Rebecca Yarros wrote that, it just really resonated with me. Like I said, this is a very fun YA, borderline, I would say like new adult fantasy romance. I love Xaden. I love college. I love the kind of world that she started to create in this book. So yes, it is a 5-star read for me. Yes, I had a really fun time. Yes, I would recommend. I'm just like, where's she going with the rest of the series? But this is definitely one of my top books. I had the best time with it. It was a 5-star read for me, so that's why it's on this list. Okay, the next book I want to talk about is Shadows of You by Catherine Cowles. So this is another one of my favorite single parent romances. Our female character is a single parent in this book, and she goes to the super small town to kind of escape the life that she had previously. She was in a very dangerous situation with her child, and that's where she meets Roan. And Roan is this super grumpy character. You've seen him previously in the Lost and Found series, but he's just super grumpy. He never says, too many words. He's very tortured. He has a lot of things in his past that comes up, but they have this connection just instantly when they're trying to save a deer. Well, she's trying to save a deer. He's like, this woman is crazy. She's not trained to help wildlife like he is. That's his job. She has a thing with like collecting animals and helping them, like bringing them back to her house and her little ranch and her barn and helping them get back to their like full health. And then they just hang around. Her daughter is so amazing. There's never a time where I annotate the first time that I read, but I tabbed this book up so much. There was just so many things with our female character, our main male character, the daughter, everything like that. I loved this book. And yes, this is romantic suspense, but it is the perfect amount of romantic suspense for me. So if you're looking for that, definitely check out this. But one of my all-time favorite single parent romances. I just love the way that Catherine wrote this book. The next one I want to talk about is Caution to the Wind by Gianna Darling. You guys know that I am a huge Gianna Darling fan, and we finally got Caution to the Wind this year, and I devoured this book. This is a very long book, but it spans years. I want to say it spans like 10 years or something like that, maybe 7 to 10 years. We see our female character May, and this book opens up with a bang, literally. It's at a carnival. You think her and her best friend are just having the best time. They're in their teens, if I'm not mistaken, and she wanders down one of these carnival rides and finds that her best friend's mother is getting brutally murdered, and they find out where she is, and they have to take matters into their own hands. So this is a very dark romance. Obviously, Gianna Darling writes it like no other, but this is Axeman and May's story, and we've seen Axeman previously in the Fallen Men series, but seeing them two as a couple was actually really refreshing. Gianna Darling does the alpha whole possessive males very well, but Axeman understands that May is her own person, and he doesn't always need to step in for everything. And they both have a lot of things to work through. There's a time where they're apart in the book, and it's for a particular reason, and they both have to work through that when they get back together, and where she comes back into Cleo and Axeman's life. Cleo is Axeman's daughter, so yes, it is dad's best friend romance, but it doesn't feel like the normal like taboo forbidden stuff. Obviously it is forbidden and taboo, but it doesn't feel that way. It was just so refreshing to finally read a new book from Gianna. I miss her writing so damn much. I'm such a fan of hers. Only she could tell this story in her way. I think if anyone else tried to, it wouldn't really work. But Caution to the Wind is one of my favorites. One of my favorites. The next one I want to talk about is King of Greed by Anna Huang. This is a marriage in trouble, marriage in crisis, romance, billionaire romance. It is the third book in the Kings of Sin series. And when I tell you by chapter 6, I was crying. Literally, I was crying in this book. I don't know what it was, but I said this countless times in many videos where I recommended this book, and I've talked about this, that if you have been in a relationship for a very long time, or you've been married for a very long time, you understand the complexity of Dominic and Alessandra's relationship and where it's at the beginning of the book. Like, you don't want your marriage or your relationship to ever get to that point, but you understand it, that how easy it can be to get to that point, and you sympathize with both of the characters. Dominic is just trying to do what Dominic has always done and just push forward and never be poor again and give Alessandra the best life that she ever could have. And she's just like, I don't want that anymore. I've had all these things. I want you. I want time with you. And he doesn't really see that. So, but it's also one of those things where their communication is too far gone over the 10 years that they've been together. And it just hit me in a way that I felt for both characters. I didn't take one side or the other. And I think that Anna Huang really wrote the groveling part and the makeup part after that. so well, and it was so realistic, and I ate it up. I loved it. I cannot wait to see what she does with the next book in the series, but this is definitely one of my favorites. It's one that I think about and I want to reread because I loved it so much. Now we're getting to the top 6 books. These are my top 6 books of the year, and it was actually easy to kind of like narrow it down. At the number 6 spot, I want to talk about Unsteady by Peyton Corinne. This book, y'all, when I read this book, I was just sobbing. Just trying to talk about this book, I kind of get like, I need to like get my thoughts together. So this book is a hockey romance. It's a contemporary romance. It's 300 something pages. You think, oh, it can't be that emotional. You're wrong. You are so wrong. We jump into this book with the prologue from where our main character, Reese, he has taken a really bad hit. He plays hockey. He takes a hit. He gets shoved into the wall and he gets the wind knocked out of him. And he has a really bad concussion to the point where his vision and his hearing get all messed up. So he thinks he can't see, he can't hear. People are screaming and stuff like that. 6 months later, where he has panic attacks when he gets on the ice. And that is how our main male character, Reese, and our main female character, Sadie, meet. Sadie goes to the rink really early on in the morning to get some skate time in because she's a figure skater. She's trying to like push through with her home life being a mess and trying to take care of her 2 brothers, trying to go to college, trying to go to work, still trying to keep up with her figure skating career. And that's where she sees Reese in the corner of the rink having a panic attack. And it hits her. She was just like, I can't have another thing to care about. But knowing Sadie and like you get to know her, she is not someone that she could just leave someone like that. You know what I mean? So she goes up to him and they have this, I wouldn't say trauma bond, but they have this bond where he like really leans and depends on her to kind of like help build his confidence up back on the ice again. That, you know, that was a one-time thing. And I just fell in love with them. I fell in love with everything. And there's a time in the book where, you know, people are going to be like, oh, he just only fell in love with her because he's dependent on her to, you know, like get back on the ice. You're wrong. There's a point in this book where he realizes that, but he's like, I'm actually not wanting to spend time with her because she makes the panic attacks go away. I'm wanting to spend time with her because I actually care about her as a person. So there is a switch that gets flipped in the middle of the book. It is so amazing. His parents are amazing. And it's a debut book. It is a debut book. This is her first book. And I was like, I will read anything you write. Literally, thank you for writing this book. You are absolutely amazing. It has, like I said, great mental health rep, just everything. It's literally one of my favorite books of the year, literally. So in the number 5 spot is Manacled by Sen-Lin Yu. I feel like Manacled is actually going to be on a lot of people's top books of the year because honestly, this book was just so amazing. I don't know how else to describe this book other than just like read it. Just read it. This is a Dramini fanfic, so you can technically read it on AO3. You can download it and send it to your Kindle. And I was like, you know what? I haven't read fanfic in so long. I've never read a Harry Potter fanfic. I've never even read Harry Potter. Like, am I going to actually understand the world and everything? And everyone's like, yes, just read it. You'll see. This book was so amazing. It was so heartbreaking. It was literally, it had me from page 1, where I was so dragged into the story between Draco and Hermione and like, what the hell is going on? Like, you're like questioning, you're like, I don't know what's going on. Like, why is this happening? Like, you're questioning all of these things, right? And let me tell you, you question so much more. It's over 1,000 pages, but it is so worth a read because it's one of those books that never leave your mind. Like, it literally, it just never leaves your mind. You will think of something or you'll see something, you'll see a paper crane and you're like, I had a cold. Oh my God, I loved it so much, Hermione. I wish I could tell you more other than just read it, but it was so beautiful. The ending of this book, while they do have an HEA, because I was worried, some people need to know, if you're a romance reader, yes, it does have an HEA. The ending is still so bittersweet because of the world that Sen-Lin Yu put these characters in, and it's after all the Harry Potter books, like it's after the war. It's in this very like weird time where Voldemort rules everything, and it was unbelievable. And I don't have a physical copy. I want to pay for someone to bind it for me. I know you can't like pay someone to do that, but like pay for the materials to have someone bind it for me because, oh my God, this is just amazing. This book was just so amazing and I want to reread it. And yeah, it was just absolutely amazing. That's why it's in the number 5 spot of my top books of the year. Now, the next 4 books are all part of the same series, okay? And it is the Boys of Tommen series. So I'm going to do this in a little bit different way and you're going to be like, what the heck? So in number 4 spot, number 4 is Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. This is the first book in Johnny and Shannon's story. She is 15, 16 and he's 17, 18 in the book. Like that's when they kind of like, they have their birthdays and stuff like that. But they act so much more mature. Johnny is struggling with this rugby injury that he's trying to hide because he thinks, oh, it's just going to get better. And obviously it never does. and he's going to school at Tommen College. And that's when Shannon starts going to Tommen College. And the very first day, he hits her with a rugby ball in her head, and her mom comes. It's like, she moved schools. I paid for her to come to the school now because she's been bullied so much at her previous school. She's just this very tiny, frail girl. And not only was she being bullied in school, she has a very bad home life. Her father is not only an alcoholic, he abuses her mother, her brother Joey, and everything. And it really opens up this world that Chloe Walsh has created that's in the early 2000s. And it was just a beautiful story. I reread these books in December, or is it the end of November? I forgot when I read them. It was towards the end of the year. I reread Binding and Keeping 13, and Joey and Shannon's story is just so beautiful. I love it so much. Johnny is like so perceptive with Shannon, and like Shannon is the only person for him. It's one of those things where he tries so hard. He's like, I can't deal with this right now. Like, I have my own problems. He can't not feel the pull towards her and want to, go towards her, if that makes sense. And they just have a beautiful love story in Binding 13. So that's why it's my number 4 book. And I'm going to go a little bit out of order because I did rank these books. Technically, I did rank these. The next book that I want to talk about is Saving Six by Chloe Walsh. So this is the first book in Joey and Aoife's story. So it's technically the 3rd book in the Boys of Tommen series. You obviously can't read my top 2 without reading these 2. But we get a glimpse of Joey and Aoife in Binding and Keeping 13. They show up. Obviously, Joey is Shannon's sister. Aoife is his girlfriend. She's very helpful in their book because she's, by the point in Binding and Keeping 13, they're already together. Joey and Aoife are. But this book, Saving Six, starts at the beginning when they're 13 years old and they're first in school. And I'll tell you, there is no one in the world for Joey but Aoife. No matter what they go through, Aoife is his person. Joey is her person. They are meant to be together forever. And I loved seeing them as children, seeing their relationship blossom and everything like that. So this is why it's number 3 on my list. Number 2 on my list is Keeping 13, because the ending of this book was so... the emotions at the end of this book brought out of me is still so vivid in my head. Even when I reread it, I still teared up and I cried. If you know, you know. If you don't, go read them. But this is the conclusion to Johnny and Shannon's story. I put them out of order because this is where the romance really starts to bloom with Johnny and Shannon. And you really get to dive into the complexities of their relationship and what they have going on in their lives, and how he is still just I think at the time he's still 17 or 18 and she's still 16. So there's not really much she can do. She's not an adult, but there is some stuff that Johnny can do. Johnny's parents are amazing in this book, and the way that they they support their child no matter what. It's very beautiful to see that kind of parent and, child relationship, but it's also crazy to see how they are just giving people and they would just do anything, just because their son is asking them. It's so beautiful. I can't really say too much that happens because a lot of it's a spoiler, but Johnny and Shannon, man, they're my second favorite couple in the book world, honestly. They're my second favorite couple because Joey and Aoife, they're my favorite. I could talk about this book so much. This is Redeeming Six by Chloe Walsh. This is my top book of the year, my favorite book of the year, my all-time favorite book of all time. It is thick. This is 800 pages, I think. Yeah, it's over 700 pages. And I don't know what it is. I see a part of myself in Joey, and Joey goes through it in this book. It's amazing mental health rep in Joey's story specifically. There's a lot of talk. It gets very deep. It gets very dark. But mental health is something that it's, once again, not linear. You can have good days and you can have bad days. And, things can just trigger you and make you flip. And there's a lot of talks of drugs. There's just a lot of triggers. But once again, there's just no one in the world for Joey but Aoife. And there's no one in the world for Aoife but Joey. And it makes sense. And these books are why I read romance. The Boys of Tommen series is exactly why I love reading romance books. Because you get emotionally invested to these characters that you believe that they're real because in your head they are. The author just created this magical and beautiful world where these characters feel real and they just go through real life stuff and you connect with them as a person and, what your past is and how that, you can see yourself in something. And it's just amazing and beautiful. And Joey is such a complex character with multiple layers. And he deserves the world, and I'm just glad that he gets his little bit of a happily ever after in this book. And yeah, this book is just amazing. That's why it's my top book of the year. But I've been talking for a while, but those are all of my top books of the year. I'm pretty sure it's my top 20 books of the year. Please let me know your favorite book in the comments down below. Drop me your favorite emoji, your most used emoji, whatever emoji you want to drop in the comments down below. 2023 has been a wild ride for reading for me. my tastes have changed. I read a lot of amazing books, and I cannot wait to see what 2024 holds for me, and I'm so excited to continue on my YouTube journey with you guys. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe for more content from me. As always, I hope you're living a novel life, and I will see you in my next one. Bye, guys.